This is the Ecoflow Delta 2. It's argued by many to be one of the best power stations out there. And this is the DJI Power 1000, the newcomer to the power station race. And well, if you look at both of these batteries on a spec sheet, they both seem pretty similar. And well, because honestly, they kind of are. But when you look past the specs and see just how they are made, it's clear that both companies are making a product to serve different purposes. Or at the very least, they are both trying to solve the same problem, but with different approaches. And well, DJI thinks the Power 1000 is the answer. There's a lot to compare with these two, but I think the most important thing is like, why do you need a power station to begin with? And there's tons of reasons. I mean, technically you can get a power station that fits in your pocket so that can charge your laptop or iPad many different times, or you can go all the way up to something that can power your entire house. So what you need really depends on different situations. I think though that this style and capacity of battery, which is around 1000 watt hours of power, I think this is the sweet spot. It is small enough and portable enough to take with you pretty much anywhere, but it's also big enough that it can power almost anything too. So it's in that sweet spot, and both of these deliver on that promise. And if you are looking for just one battery that can do everything, one of these is it. Now, like I said, what you are using the battery for kind of determines which one you should get. And well, I'll just explain how I use these types of batteries, and you can kind of go off of that to decide which one might be best for you. And for me, there's really three main things for a battery like this. First is for home storage. You know, luckily where I live here in Utah, we don't really have blackouts all that often, at least since I've been here. Although where I used to live in California, rolling blackouts, brownouts, those were pretty common, and they're getting even more common. And obviously in different places of the world where you have severe weather or power outages are just a much more real occurrence, having some backup power is going to be helpful. So I like having a battery like this around the house for those off chances that the power does go out. I can power certain things until the power comes back on. But not just for that, having this around the house is helpful. For example, if I'm working in the yard and I don't want to like run a 100-foot extension cord, instead I could just take this out there with me and plug in whatever I'm using, you know, a power tool or a yard equipment, anything like that. One of these comes in handy for that. So really, I mean, it's just nice to have extra power wherever you need it. And that's one of the main reasons to have one of these. And I think that use case kind of applies to everyone. That is something everyone can use. But the other one's maybe a little bit more niche. And for me, the other one is when I'm camping or going off grid, going off-roading, having a battery like this has become vital. I've made plenty of videos in the past about things like my portable refrigerator. I've made videos on Starlink. All of those things require power, and when you're off grid, well, you need a battery like this. And these are big enough that they can power whatever I need for multiple days, and they really come in handy. And there's more into that, which I'll talk about in a second. And then the third reason I use it is for, you know, production like this. Obviously much more niche than any of the other options, but you know, being able to have power when I'm running things like lights, running cameras, audio equipment, that really does come in handy, and it really lets me shoot in more places because I don't have to worry about having a super long extension cord. I can go out in the middle of nowhere and still have my entire setup. Now, I bring all of that up because it really is important to decide why you need one of these batteries, and it will make your decision of which one to choose that much easier. Because spec-wise, well, they are very, very similar. So it really comes down to the features. And speaking of specs, I'll throw them up on screen here, but you'll notice that they are very similar. They're both 1024 watt hour batteries. Their output is slightly different. The DJI is 2200 watts, whereas the Delta 2 is only 1800 watts. Although DJI does have a higher max output at 4400 watts compared to the 2700 watts peak output of the Delta 2. Plus the DJI battery is quiet and it only goes up to 23 decibels. They are both rated for 3000 cycles, so they aren't gonna, you know, die on you anytime soon. I mean, you could use these for a decade and not have any issues. Now, another great spec with DJI is its recharging speed. In fast recharge mode, it uses 1200 watts. So that means it can go from 0 to 80% in 50 50 minutes, and it can charge all the way to 100 in just 70 minutes. That's super fast for how big this battery is. And compare that to the Ecoflow here, which is significantly slower, 0 to 80% in 80 minutes, which is already slower than a full charge with the Power 1000. But if you want to go to 100%, it's going to take 130 minutes. I mean, that's still not, crazy, but when you compare it to the fast charging here, it's a pretty big difference. So as you can see, from a spec perspective, they're very, very similar, and I wouldn't buy one or the other because of those specs. They're both going to get the job done, but it really comes down to the features, like the ports and what's the kind of, the general philosophy behind these batteries. The way I explain it is that Ecoflow is kind of like a dumb battery, and I don't mean dumb in a bad way. I mean more so that this is just a battery that you, the user, can do whatever you want with. It doesn't have any fancy features. It's just a battery that has plugs, and you just use it whatever you need. Whereas DJI kind of has a little bit more of a philosophy behind it. There are different types of ports on here. There's different ways that DJI may have envisioned a user would use this battery, and well, both work equally well. Again, it just depends on your use case. And for me, after using the DJI battery since it's been out, I'll be honest, there was a few things at first that I didn't like all that much. And for me, it was mainly the port selection, although now that has changed now that I've used it more. I kind of see the philosophy here, because the ports at first glance are pretty lacking. There's only 2 AC ports here, where on the Ecoflow Delta 2, there are 6 AC ports, which is a big difference. Now granted, only 2 of those are grounded on the Ecoflow, which is the same on both, but that's just a lot more AC ports. And then there are many more USB-A ports on the Delta 2. There are 4 USB-A ports, 2 of those for fast charging, and then there are 2 USB-C ports, both are 100 watts, whereas on the DJI Power 1000, there are 2 USB-A ports and 2 USB-C ports, but those USB-C ports on the Power 1000 are 140 watts each, which is super fast. So that means you can easily charge a MacBook Pro at full speed, like a 16-inch one, and not have any issues. That's not something you'll be able to do with the Delta 2. They're very similar, so you kind of decide, like, do you want more output, more speed from those USB-C ports, or do you want more port options with the more USB-A? It's a give and take. But another plus with the Ecoflow is that it has a car port built in, that cigarette style plug that you are used to in your car. And that is vital for me because I use this to power my portable refrigerator when I'm off grid. And that is built right in, whereas on the DJI, that is not built right in. But that's where DJI's philosophy or their idea of what this battery is supposed to be kind of comes into play, because there are 2 more ports here called the SDC ports. These are a bidirectional port, so you can charge with it and you can power things with it. And this SDC ports allows you to plug in different cables that offer different accessories. This is a fast charging port. Now, one downside is that you do need an adapter to power with these ports, but if you are using the SDC ports, that means your other ports are now open, so you can use more of the AC ports if you needed to for other accessories. And with the SDC port, you can add a car charger, so I can power my fridge if I wanted to. And there's also other options like charging my drone batteries from DJI. So right now you can charge Inspire battery, you can charge a Mavic 3 battery, you can charge an Air 3 battery as well, all really quickly. Because this is an SDC port, it can offer more power, so I can quickly charge those batteries, which is something I'm doing all the time, like I said, for content creation and when I'm out camping or off grid. Oftentimes these are really beautiful locations that I want to capture, so I do that all the time. I charge my drone batteries with these bigger batteries all the time, and having that faster charge is a real plus. Another thing this SDC port enables is solar charging. That's something you could do on the Ecoflow as well, although this only supports 500 watts of charging, where the DJI supports 800 watts. That's a ton of power. That's going to be a lot of panels, but you can do it if you needed to. And with that SDC panel, that's where you get that charging. And if you wanted to add a bunch of panels, they actually sell a module that you can add to the side of the battery, which allows you to connect all of them at once. But having solar is something that I do actually use when I'm off grid and camping, because if you're sitting at camp, the sun is out, you're not really doing anything, why not throw out the solar panel and charge up these batteries? That is very useful. DJI and Ecoflow both sell solar panels that you can use with these. They both work great. You can just do more solar with the DJI. But also theoretically in the future, this port is going to allow DJI to expand it to even more options. And that is something I'm excited about because it makes this battery that I have now possibly be more in the future than what it is now. So that's something I'm very interested in. And I thought at first, when I first got this battery out, that those SDC ports were going to be very annoying and that I wasn't going to like them. And I could see the point of needing a special cable in order to use them. That definitely is a downside. But once you have those cables, it actually is a very big benefit that makes this battery a lot more useful than it was just out of the box. Now, that doesn't mean that the Ecoflow is, out of luck when it comes to expandability, because this actually allows you to expand and add more batteries to it. There's a port right on here that if you wanted to buy another module, you can connect them together and just expand how much power you have. That's a really nice feature. And that's something that I think DJI could do with the SDC port, and hopefully they will eventually. And so that's kind of what I meant when I talked about DJI having a little bit more of a philosophy with their battery. Whereas Ecoflow, whatever you want it for, it's gonna work. DJI has an idea in mind. If you are in their ecosystem like I am, I have a ton of DJI products. I've talked about them here on the channel. Or if you're kind of a content creator who wants that fast charging with that 140 watt power, there's a lot of ways that DJI envisions its users using this that makes sense with, the ports and selection that's built in. Whereas Ecoflow is just a battery. So yeah, again, both of these batteries are giving you a lot of the same features, but just in a slightly different way. And DJI has the edge on a lot of those. And while certainly at first when I got the Power 1000, I was a little iffy with some of the decisions, after actually using it and this becoming like my main battery for a lot of things, I don't really have those concerns anymore. I think both of these are going to do the job well, but if you're looking for something that has a little bit more direction, DJI, the Power 1000, is giving you that. So if you want to learn more about these, I'll leave links down below where you can pick one up for yourself. And either way, whichever one you choose, I think having a battery like this is important. And well, there's some great options now.